look for the discomfort first. What is off-putting or unfamiliar? That's typically the pathway to growth.
So I've just wrapped up an episode with Brendan Brazier and Mr. Mark McTavish. And we talk about a really interesting subject today that I think a lot of people from the fitness industry are going to find as really, really good news. And that good news is drinking alcoholic beverages is very healthy for you. And you can not only drink them for entertainment in the evening, but you can take it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. These guys have created a new alcoholic beverage that's got a lot of healthy stuff that apparently makes you feel good, makes you think better, and improves the whole quality of your life. So check out this episode. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. This is great news. Hope you enjoy the episode.
So I'm here in a brewery. I guess it's the holiday season, and I didn't know what to expect when I was driving up. I came up the back and I saw kind of like these Chinese wholesale warehouses. And
Soy sauce.
That's right.
Yep.
And I came into the front and I've been given a beer, and I've never actually had a beer on a podcast, so this will be quite interesting. It's not a beer, is it?
It's not a beer. It's a cold pressed juice, but it's been fermented.
It's a cold pressed juice, and it kind of looks very much like a health drink. I've got passion fruit and strawberry and ginger.
Yeah, but it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. It probably is a duck. It is a health drink.
And lion's mane in it.
Lion's mane, yeah, it's very uplifting, makes you feel warrior-like, gives you a lot of energy and clarity, and just many positive sort of benefits from that.
And it's something that you yourself drink in the day as a...
During the day, every day.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a gift that I give myself daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a healthy sort of, would you call it alcoholic beverage? Or?
It is an alcoholic beverage, surely,
Yeah.
but it's a functional beverage. I mean, I look at this as a health tonic more than anything else, but it really is just cold pressed juice, but it happens to be fermented. So I try not to come up with too many categorical sort of ways of referencing it beyond just that. It's cold pressed juice.
Right.
That's it. But it's cold pressed juice that got left on your counter for 3 months. And when you went back to it and it had pressure on the container and you thought, oh, it's gone bad, I should pour that down the drain, we decided to package that instead of pouring it down the drain. Right. So I remember as a kid growing up in Canada, we would go to the apple farm, come back with a big jug of cider, which isn't cider at all. Only in America would you call it cider, which means alcoholic apple juice. And in the UK where you're from, you would say cider to reference a fermented alcoholic apple juice, right? In America, you say cider, but you say hard cider or sweet cider. But there's really only one such thing as cider. That's fermented apple juice, and it's alcoholic, right? So this to me is just fermented juice. In the way that 101 Cider House makes fermented apple juice, that's cider, right?
Right. Yeah. It tastes very good. So I think it'd be good to sort of give a bit of a background, because I guess we're essentially a fitness-based podcast, fitness company, and normally these two things don't mix. So I think it'd be good to probably go back and tell a little bit of story about you guys, and I'll probably start with you first, Brendan. Tell us a little bit about your background. You're an athlete, and you sort of got a little bit of a unique story in terms of how you were training and your nutrition. So just give us a bit of a background on yourself and how you came into this.
Yeah. I started off. I did triathlon, so swimming, biking, running, right out of high school, and did that professionally. I did that for 7 years, full time. Ironman was my goal, so that's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, then a marathon, so 26.2 miles of running. So obviously a lot of training is needed for that. So I trained. I just trained a lot for 7 years, and it went well. I did okay, but I never really broke through to being one of the premier athletes. And I was ready for something different. I had been making this blender drink for myself that had worked really well and allowed me to race well for the last 7 years. And I met up with someone who I actually heard on the radio talking about maca, which is good for the adrenals. It's called maca, M-A-C-A. Yeah. Right. So it's good for the adrenals. I was having adrenal fatigue at the time. I knew because I wasn't sleeping well. I was gaining weight even though I was exercising. A bunch of things weren't working. I was hormonally injured was actually the term that I started to use after that. But I heard this guy on the radio talking about maca, so I actually reached out to him because he described a lot of my symptoms. And the guy's name's Charles. We ended up going into business together, and this is back in 2003. and we started a company called Vega in 2004. So basically based on what I'd made for myself for years. So a plant-based drink. I've been vegan 27, 28 years now, so just eating plants, no animal products. And I really think that helped my performance a lot. So we made a replica of that blender drink that had the protein, the essential fats, the fiber, the greens, the enzymes, all these things, and brought that out in 2004, sold it in 2011, and now here we are, 15, almost 16 years later. But it went from full-time triathlon racing to just getting kind of thrown into this world of creating a product and getting it out there, and just the really gritty, blue collar kind of brand building that we had to do with Vega.
Right.
So then,
and just to jump in there, and you also, in terms of the sort of plant-based, you also wrote a couple of books and trained a lot of athletes on that sort of style of that way of nutrition. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So back in 2004, I was it was getting kind of known that I was eating plant-based, so a completely vegan diet, and I was improving quickly at a much faster rate than most people. So people were asking me what I was doing and what I was eating, and that with doing triathlon, it's really about recovery. Like the faster you can get your body to regenerate and renew itself, the better you're going to get in a shorter amount of time. So it's all about recovery. So I really focused on food, found plant-based helped tremendously, got rid of inflammation, digestion was better, sleep quality was better, felt more efficient, just felt stronger. So I became a big advocate of a plant-based diet back, a long time ago. And then I wrote a book called Thrive that came out originally just a self-published one in 2004. Then a few years later, I expanded it. It was published by Penguin in Canada and the US. And it was really just my nutritional philosophy. I had a set of principles, nutrition principles. High net gain nutrition is one. So choosing to eat foods that take less digestive energy but return more nutrition. So less energy out, more vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants in. So switching over from pasta and white rice, things like that, to buckwheat, quinoa, things like that digest more easily and have more nutrition. So like I say, less out, more in. And then the whole hormonal bit too, like getting your hormones in check, because when you exercise, mentally it may be stress relieving, but physically you're still developing stress. You're breaking down body tissue, your body has to compensate and repair it. So that takes energy, it takes work from your body. So hormones, often the adrenals, get fried. A lot of people have adrenal fatigue and don't know it, and I did for years, didn't realize it. So when you get the diet dialed in, cortisol comes down, the stress hormone, you sleep more deeply, you wake up, you're fresh, you're rested, you don't crave caffeine or sugar, and then you've solved the problem of fatigue, not the symptom. A lot of people treat the symptom, obviously, with caffeine and stimulants that work, but it is short term. So I really went back, took a step back, and that's why it took so long, I think, to catch on, is that it's not a quick fix. It's very much the opposite. You actually feel worse before you feel better. So you have to stick with it. So it took a while to catch on, but once it did, then people, they read the book and tried it, and it worked. And then that kind of tied in with Vega, because it was the same nutritional philosophy that we built Vega on, that I put forth in the book. So again, long time. We're in year 15 now. So 15. It was a long haul, but it works. If people, are patient and stick with it, it really does work.
And there's different. What's the difference between, like, now is it a marketing term, but people use the term plant-based? What's the difference between vegetarian and vegan and a plant-based diet, or are they just different ways of marketing it?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different kind of philosophies around. Some get very, very deep into it, but basically a vegan diet, well, vegan, first of all, isn't just diet. It's also like, don't wear leather and, don't support things that use animals in a bad way. So, if you're vegan, you shouldn't be going to the circus, and the rodeo and stuff like that, right? So it's beyond just what you eat. And then plant-based is diet specific. So you just eat plants. If it came from an animal, you don't. Obviously milk and eggs and things like that, obviously meat as well. So and also too, vegan can kind of conjure up more kind of emotion too, and some political suggestions and stuff in there too. So a lot of people say plant-based now when they're talking about strictly diet. as opposed to just an all-encompassing way of looking at the world and how we treat animals.
Right. Okay. And there's obviously a big, the movie Game Changers, and you had some involvement in that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm one of the EPs, and my friend James Wilkes started filming this, 8 years ago, and he's just, done an amazing job with it, just to, see it through. And then as it got going, bigger name folks came on, like Louis, who made The Cove. He won an Academy Award for The Cove, so he came on board, and then James Cameron came on board as an EP and brought Arnold on board, and these world-class athletes, and they did an incredible job, and proud to be an EP on it and help them out with a few things, but they really pulled it together very well, and the science is super tight, and really proud of how that's come together.
It seems to be something that's created a lot of conversation. Why do you think now it's been so? Why do you think it's created such a lot of interest in that, and in some cases controversy as well? Really.
Yeah, I think a few reasons. One, people want to feel better. And maybe they've tried eating plant-based for a little while and noticed they felt better, but then didn't really know quite how to do it. It's actually a lot easier to do than I think people realize. Game Changers also has a great website that has tons of recipes, all vegan recipes. And I think also environment, people are very conscious now of climate change and the implications. And more than all transportation combined, animal agriculture is what contributes to climate change, artificial climate change. So it's not just the CO2, but also the methane from the animals, the nitrous oxide from the animal waste. So a lot of greenhouse gas going into the atmosphere from the animal agriculture industry. And I think people are, concerned about that, rightfully so, and wanting to do their part to steer away from that. And of course, then just animal welfare. People love their pets, and they make the connection. I love my dog. How is this, this calf or this pig really that different? Similar levels of intelligence, and if you get to know cows and pigs, they have the same kind of loyalty, and so people start making that connection. I think that's another thing that really kind of flips the switch.
And it's obviously created some sort of opposition as well. We talked about it off camera. How, when people are sort of, they watch this type of documentary and they hear all these positive things, and then you hear people with counter arguments. How can people find that middle ground? Because it's if we've been in the industry, and I guess sort of quite in touch with what's happening, and then you take that down another level with people that are probably not in the industry, the general consumer, and they're kind of getting all this different information. How do you, if people want to sort of find the middle ground and the truth, what's your thoughts on how they can do that without sort of being influenced by marketing and big brands and people that have got, sort of financial reasons to promote a particular story and sort of see through it and say, well, okay, look, this is a good thing for me? Because you certainly get this in all types of fitnesses and diets and everything. It's like, well, yeah, they're doing it because somebody behind them is making a load of money out of it, and that's why they've sponsored various reports, etc. What's your view on that?
That's a good question for sure, and that's actually addressed in Game Changers too. The Cattlemen's Association has lobbyists. They're a very powerful lobby, and they have spokespeople who go and just kind of muddy the waters. They don't even have to say things that really shift you to their way of thinking. They just have to create doubt and confusion. Confusion is the big enemy. You don't want that. So that's what they try and do. And you look at it too, like the meat industry is very inefficient. To grow cows, obviously you got to grow a lot of food. There's land, water, there's fossil fuel. That all comes at a cost. And there are subsidies. As taxpayers, we pay to subsidize this inefficient industry, because if people paid fair market value for meat, it would be out of reach. It would just be so expensive. So there's some political ties there too, and of course we'd like to see fair market value represented through the food system. So if you create food more efficiently, it's less expensive, and right now that's not the case. So I think just seeing the whole picture of that too, and actually, and Mark too, like he saw an advanced screening of Game Changers back before it had come out, and you became vegan basically right away.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the fitness business for a long time, a decade. And before that, working out hard in the gym since I was 14. You know, I was bullied as a kid and wanted to be big and muscular, and I got into it for the vanity. You know, fitness to me was always a more vain experience. It was about my six-pack and how big my arms were. You know, and then it became more about feeling good because I had experienced a lot of pain through training so hard, and sciatica and all sorts of pain that needed to be remedied. And I was remedied through diet and lifestyle. And I was vegan or plant-based, as they say, for at least a couple of years in my late 20s, and then went back to not being plant-based, and then, you know, reincorporating dumbbell lifting into my workouts and getting back to the things I used to do after doing yoga and meditation solid for years, and only that. So it was a bit more of a cold turkey type of philosophy, which I don't support nowadays. When I went to see the movie with Brendan, I thought, you know what, this isn't about cold turkey, it's just about what makes sense. I just saw this movie and everything is so positive, and the reasons that I want to make the shift in my life now are because it's just better. It's not about cutting out meat, it's about I don't need it. I don't need to cut it out because there's no point. What purpose does it serve? If I can still look good, feel good, be the same person I know myself to be, but potentially even a better version of myself, and only consume plants, then why not? What's the argument that would work against that? There is no argument that could convince me otherwise because I just know it to be better. And it's been 8 months now that I've been plant-based and I feel fantastic. You know, so I think the best way to find the middle ground for people out there is to really, you know, allow for observation through experience. Don't talk about it, be a naysayer, argue with the philosophy of something. Just delve into it for a second, give it a shot and see how you feel. If you don't feel better on a plant-based diet, then don't be on a plant-based diet. But if you do, then be on one. My fears for those who are fearful of being, you know, in the mindset of doing better for themselves or choosing better because they feel like they have to do this or they have to do that. Or that's what I've been raised to do. You know, I'm from Minnesota or Canada like me, and I was raised on meat and potatoes. I can't cut out the meat and potatoes. That's an insult to my mother's cooking. No, it's not. Your mother cooked with the ingredients that she had available to her. She did the best with what she had. If someone told her 50 years ago, no, this is the best. Feed your kids lots of plants. And if you choose to, only plants, that's fine too. But we never heard that message. We were always hearing the message about milk and the message about beef and the message about, like, if you're a hungry man and you want to gain weight and be a big kid, you eat chili with lots of beef in it and you chug back chocolate milk after your workout. You do all this stuff. It's just commercialization of a food system that doesn't really work.
Yeah. And in sort of high level performance then, I guess your experience is that there are examples of people that have thrived on that type of diet, but is it right that, you know, it doesn't work for some people? Is it very personal, or what's your thoughts on that?
You know, I really think that it will work if people wanted to. Like, and I know food is very emotional and nostalgic. You know, it ties back to, you know, memories of being a kid and things like that. And I know some people get really tied up in that, and of course, you know, everyone's genetics are a bit different and things like that. But I really think that if you wanted to, like, there's nothing that meat delivers that plants can't. Mm-hmm. You know, animals get their nutrition from plants. Obviously, they're just a median. You don't need to eat the animal. You can get everything. So, yeah, I think some people look for reasons why it doesn't work, and not just eating plant-based, but just life in general. Like why they can't get fit or feel better, or, you know, whatever it is they're trying to do. Some people just look for excuses. I mean, you know, we know this is human nature, right? Like why they can't be an entrepreneur, why they can't start a business. And, you know, I mean, some reasons, sure, are legit, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are just kind of like, you know, excuses, really.
Yeah.
Fear and laziness. Those are the two greatest reasons that I see that people don't choose better with anything in life.
And distraction, too. I mean, it's such like this world, too, like, might sound old here, but a lot of younger people I know, they're so easily distracted, you know, and it's just like, just stay focused. You don't even have to be that smart. Just show up, like, and do it consistently for a couple decades, and you'll probably be successful. And it's just, they want short term. It's this instant gratification. And it's just, I mean, I don't have the talent or the ability to have success that quickly. I mean, it was like I say, Vega was 15 years. I started training for Ironman like 6 or 7 years before I actually did one. Like, you have to get up every morning and think, I'm still 5-6 years away from doing this race, and I'm getting up at 5 o'clock every morning. Like, you have to think so long term, and I think that just really got me on a good path early because I was working towards something that was so far off. And then when, building the business, Vega, it just was normal. Like it didn't seem that unusual to me. And sure, yeah, like things happen quicker now that I've learned they can if you if you're efficient and you know the right ways of doing things. But people you just got to show up, and that's
I think
really
everyone
it.
wants things. I guess all of us. It's like 6 years seems a long time to wait, doesn't it?
Right.
15 years for a business is it's like, well, do I really want to wait that long? I want it.
But in life, though, do you want to write a book about your accomplishments, or do you want to write an article?
Yeah, that's great.
Right? You could write a book, right? I mean, it took years and years and years to do what he's accomplished, and through all of that is all the stories. That's all the makeup, the filler, the meat, in a twist of words. The meat of his story is from those years and years and years of just living by what he preached, and also not preaching, just living it. Right? It's like no different than saying, "Oh, I'm on a plant-based diet." Oh, I eat plants. You're saying the same thing. One's inclusionary, one's exclusive. Vegan is even the other thing. That's like, "Oh, I'm vegan." "Oh, so you're one of those vegans." Yeah, I'm vegan. "Oh, I'm not like him. I'm not vegan." It's exclusionary. It's like saying, "Oh, I'm vegan and you're not."
It's finding divides, and the last thing we need now, I think, just in general, is more things that divide us. Like, why don't we just find things that
are
common ground and bring it together? And I remember too in the early days of Vega going around, trying to get Vega into stores, and they say, "Oh no, we don't believe in vegan. We don't, we don't have vegan foods here." I'm like, "You have a produce department. You got apples.
Yeah.
You got bananas. That's vegan." They're like, "Oh well, yeah, I guess."
They're
okay."
fearful of the mindset.
Yeah.
They think it represents something that they're fearful of because they're not familiar with it. Familiarity is comfortable, right? And through discomfort is when we grow and change,
Yeah.
right? So we typically choose things that are discomforting. As people, we're just like that. He chose it with his athletic pursuits and the things that he did in his life to get to where he is now today. He chose to do the things that were difficult. I do that every day of my life. If I see something as difficult, I run to it. And I want to do it more and more and more and more until it's something I do really, really well. Because a year ago, I was horrible at it. It was something I didn't know how to do, and I was at first fearful of it, so I didn't do it at all, didn't even go near it. Or I would go to it and say, I just don't want to do it. And that's the laziness. So fear and laziness were typically, for me anyways, the two things that prevented me from being better. And then I chose discomfort to find change, and then change for the better. So look for the discomfort first. What is off-putting or unfamiliar? That's typically the pathway to growth. But it has to make sense too. Don't just do it for no reason and just do it blindly just for the sake of change, because surely change is good. Change is just good. Well, it's not great if you lost all the money gambling the night before and you lost your home the next day and now your wife divorces you and you can't see your kids anymore. That's a change, but not for the better. That's not a good change. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, anyone can run well when they're feeling good. Like in a marathon, if you're feeling good, you're running well, and that's great. It's when it gets hard that's where the opportunity is. Like, so I got to the point where I actually wanted the point in the marathon to actually start feeling hard, because I knew that if I could weather that storm and I could come through that hard section well, then that's where the growth would be, and I would have a good race. But and if it doesn't get hard, you're probably doing it wrong too. You're not, you haven't found your limit. You haven't found your breaking point. And that's true of course, not just sport, but other things too. Like, let's find that breaking point. It's okay to go over the line. Now you know where that line is. And then just operate just within that. But you got to find it before you know where your limit is. So there's, of course, so many things that I think that I learned just by trying in sport and triathlon that really helped a lot jumping into the business world. And with Vega before, just like kind of that, if it's hard, I guess it's good. There's a breakthrough there, and as I was telling you off camera too. I hadn't drank any alcohol for, it was 14 years, and not that I ever had any bad experience. And I would drink, socially and stuff in my early 20s, and it was never a bad experience. But then I just sort of grew out of it, I felt, and then. That's how I met Mark, actually, is I was at Whole Foods and I saw 101, actually it was this, Scrumpy, sitting on the shelf, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, what's this? It's 0 sugar. I looked, and one ingredient one ingredient, apples. I'm like, that's amazing. This one ingredient, not even water. You don't even add water to this. But how is it that it's 0 sugar and apples are the only ingredient? So I emailed info@101 Cider. Mark responds within 20 minutes, and he knew of Vega and of me from, we grew up in Canada, so we connected, became friends, and then I just got really fascinated in what he was creating. Was just, I think, the elegance of the solution that he was providing by fermenting juice. It was just so simple. It's just fermented juice. Like, you just get a tank of it, you let it sit, ambient bacteria. You don't do anything. You don't put in any yeast or anything, and it just ferments. You drink this, no hangover. You feel great. I feel focused. I was drinking one that had some green tea in it as well. So the focus and the clarity, and I found that it was like a nootropic. I could just go through all this work, crush it, feel
Creativity is
great.
enhanced.
Yeah, totally.
And you're just crushing stuff. Like, you're just writing and typing and creating the whole time.
So as an athlete, though, and someone that was so clean and plant-based and pure, what made you kind of even consider looking at something like alcohol?
Well, just in the simplicity of it really appealed to me. I love elegant solutions, and people with hangovers and all these stomach aches and all these problems with alcohol. It's like, why don't you just let juice go bad and just ferment it? And I love fermented foods too, like sprouted tofu I like a lot, kimchi, sauerkraut, really high in probiotics, good for your intestinal flora, good for digestion. So I drank this and felt great. Stomach felt really good. Having a few billion probiotics in there definitely helped. So to me it was a health drink. Like, I didn't think of it as anything other than a fermented juice. It's just the best known byproduct of fermentation is alcohol. But the way Mark was making it and still is making it, that's not the only byproduct. There are a whole bunch of organic acids, and there's vitamins and things part of the fermentation process, as there is with kimchi and sauerkraut, and as there is in the way Mark makes it. So I got really interested in it, and then we became business partners, and that's basically it.
So Mark, we had a chat off camera about the difference between how traditional cider's made and what goes into it, and how you're making it. So for people listening, can you explain the differences? Because it was something I wasn't aware of before.
Yeah, again, traditional cider is fermented apples. That's it. Just the same as wine is fermented grapes. That's what you think it is anyways. It's not really what it is anymore, but that's what people think it is. Now, with a product like this, the goal was to meet people where they were at. Give them a little bit of what they think they need to earn the right to give them what I really wanted to give them, And what I wanted to give them was the world's healthiest alcoholic beverage, period. I came from 10 years in the fitness industry, going to conferences every weekend, meeting up with personal trainers who are partying all weekend long because they're at a conference somewhere. And they've just seen a guy like Brendan on stage speaking, and they think, hey, I'm here learning all this stuff from really legendary guys like Brendan Brazier, who's on stage talking about the plant-based diet, and oh my God, I feel so amazing. Hey, let's go drink one off tonight. Hey guys, a few rounds, right? So I'd say, hey ladies, what can I get you? And they'd say, well, I'll grab a vodka water. Give me a gin and tonic. How about a white wine? I'll have my Pinot Grigio. The least at which it could hurt me was their philosophy. If it's clear, flavorless, odorless, sugar-free, well, yeah, I'll drink that. Well, there's nothing good in it. It's devoid of anything good. But they think it's got the least of the bad.
Right.
It
There's
just
the
gives
least
me my
amount of
alcohol.
sugar, and just sort of, but yeah, it's like no
I've
one's
heard
thought of
CrossFit. There's
Right.
tequila. That's the drink of choice, is it? Because there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
Right,
No,
right.
there's nothing in it. So this is the
Exactly.
thing. We make alcohol that is not focused on what's not in it. It's focused on what's in it. So if you flip around the can like you did there and show, it's about the ingredients. The front label of this product is actually what people think is the back label. It just shows what's in it.
And those are the only ingredients, like I say, not even water. So environmentally speaking too, making this is so efficient because like beer, obviously, barley and hops and malt and all that, it takes a lot of water. You were telling me this, that was really interesting because their roots don't go very deep, whereas apple trees, the roots go very deep. They don't need a ton of water. They pick it up from the ground, and there's no added water after. So environmentally, especially being a California company, and the drought in California and just being mindful of that too, it's just, it was just another thing that it's like, yeah, this is such a smart, efficient way of doing things, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think for fitness folks, though, I think this is really relevant. I know I am a fitness guy. I came from working out in the gym for years and years and years, like I said before, since I was 14. And I remember through high school thinking to myself, I'm training so hard. I just want to be bigger and stronger so I don't get picked on at school and so girls will look at me. You know, it was a vain sort of intention that I had at the time, but it was also reassurance and self-confidence and all these things. And I wanted those things so badly, but I thought that the only way to get it was by working out in the gym. But every day I ate nothing but Wonder Bread bagels and drank Nestea iced tea. And that's it. And I basically just ate that every day all along. And cereal as well. I love cereal, so I used to eat cereal a lot. But it was so devoid of any nutrition. There was nothing good in it, right? And it was really just protein shakes and weight gainers, these mass gainers that I used to take.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when I got to college, I would drink bowls of creatine monohydrate, loaded up with the grape juice because that was the best vessel or transport to get it into my system, so the books said, because we didn't have the internet back then really in the same way we do today. I wasn't on my iPhone training from my iPhone. I wasn't following the Fit Plan app. I wasn't using the nutrition sort of skills that I found in my hand, in the palm of my hand. I was actually going and experiencing this and learning it from buying something on the shelf and then going to the gym and trying it. And I tried the HMB and I tried the hydroxycut and I tried like all the different things that I could use to get an advantage in the gym. A couple extra pounds here and there meant a lot to me when I weigh a $168 and I'm trying to be a $172. I need 4 pounds. Where can I get it? Oh, a few more steaks, some deep fried food, a bunch of beers at night with the boys at college. Like anything to gain weight was really the intention. I just wanted to be bigger, 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 bigger. And there's so much crap going into my body and really nothing good at all. So I couldn't peak out with my performance because I was looking at it the wrong way. I didn't know how to get better. I was thinking it was just about gaining weight and just looking good, right? But my insides were just so mad at me the whole time that I was inflamed, red in the chest. I thought it was just because I was Scottish, right? I was red in the chest constantly, always hot. I lived in Canada. I never owned a winter jacket. Legit, true story. Never owned a winter jacket since I was like 16. Once my mom didn't have control over my winter jacket situation, I'm like, done with the winter jacket. Just like, let me gain weight, let me be gluten intolerant and raging heat and hot in the chest all the time, and I'll be fine. Who cares about winter? And I'll run from my car to the inside, so I won't have to worry about the cold, So I spent most of my life in the gym, just training to gain weight. After years of doing that, I had so much pain and so much inflammation and it just felt so crappy. And then I went to an osteopath. And this guy that saw me for the first time actually saw me doing an ayahuasca retreat. And we were doing ayahuasca in Ontario up on a lake somewhere in cottage country with my buddy, my best friend in the world, who's a master of mindfulness. And he basically came with me for this weekend to do ayahuasca. And we went in there with no real intentions and saw everyone with cancer to people that were really sick and on their deathbed doing ayahuasca as a medicine. And what they were taking from the experience was completely different than us. We were both so chill and so mindful already, doing meditation and yoga all the time and just really experiencing life to the fullest, that we actually saw a lot of different things when we did this weekend. But one of the things that I take away from that weekend was meeting Justin. Justin Roche was his name. He's the trainer for the Maple Leafs, the hockey team in Toronto, and the Raptors back in the day, and really talented osteopath, so a naturopathic sort of practitioner. And he said, hey, handsome, you've got a parasite, is what he said to me. I'm like, what do you know about my parasites? Who are you? Right? So he said, no, you've got a parasite. Lay down. So he laid me down and he checked out my body and he said, dude, you got a lot of issues going on here. I got to fix you. I said, well, what are you going to do? He's like, well, I need to have you come down to Station 7. This was the gym that he was training at, downtown Toronto with Gary Roberts, famous hockey player. And I trained a lot of athletes, professional athletes, and I was paying this guy a lot of money to fix me. Why? Because I'd messed myself up for like 15 years training in the gym and eating the wrong foods. So he had to train me how to walk again. We were walking backwards on treadmills and trying to get my posture corrected, got my sciatica dealt with, and doing a lot of nerve work and whatnot. But I'll never forget, he said to me very specifically at the start of the training, he's like, you have to cut gluten, you have to cut alcohol, you have to cut sugar, you just got to clean it all up. And the biggest thing is cut dairy. You got to cut dairy. I'm like, okay, cool. So I did all that, and I felt amazing, right? But I will say this now. I always thought I was gluten intolerant. My sister's celiac. And then I found out that after 8 months of being plant-based, I crush gluten like it's my job. Give me anything with gluten in it, I'll crush it. Doesn't hurt me at all. And the only change I've made is I'm plant-based. So maybe it's that my gut is healthier, my whole body's functioning better now, and it can handle the gluten because it's worthy of the fight. It's just clean and high functioning now. Where before it was all about alcohol and dairy and all this crap I was putting in it. It's just about getting bigger, bigger, bigger. And that caused a lot of stress on the body because naturally I should be 175. That's my frame. I was 225. My body was pissed at me. Straight up, it was just like, dude, you're a dick. Stop doing what you're doing. I hate you. I don't want to be in this body with you anymore. In fact, I lost you about 50 pounds ago, right?
225.
Yeah.
What do you know?
175.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
And what's your thoughts on gluten? I know you talk about it, Brendan, as well. Like when people go to plant-based diets, they end up eating a lot of gluten. Is that right? Is it sort of like is it that they can you do plant-based wrong? I suppose.
Well, I mean, there's some things that are just all gluten, like tofurkey, for example. It's just like gluten, which, and for those who don't know, gluten is really just the protein in wheat, and it can be isolated, but a lot of people have trouble digesting it. I'm completely fine with gluten when it's in a natural, like heirloom variety, so like sprouted bread. I eat quite a lot of sprouted bread, so it has gluten in it, and it's just a non-hybrid wheat that's been sprouted. And there's also like pizza, 00 pizza. It's this pizza crust that's just an heirloom variety that's naturally low in gluten. But there's still some there. But if you don't have celiac, you should be able to handle gluten if it's a good source. It's like a low processed or non-processed, and then spouted's the best. Again, like sprouting, fermentation, that type of thing helps so much.
Yeah. Why do you think so many people now? I know my dad sort of thinks he's got this gluten thing now, sort of later in life. Why do you think so many people now suddenly have, or seem to have, intolerances with gluten? Is it just that they...
It's not just gluten, though. It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
People are so unhealthy in so many ways that their body just starts to get these alarm calls where like the alarm starts going off. It's like, oh my God, this is a problem. Oh, that's a problem. Oh, that's a problem. I got to cut this and cut this and cut this and cut that. It's so much focus on what's not good for me and what I shouldn't have in my body, but no focus on what I should have in my body and what's actually good for me. It takes more education to research what's good for you and what works for you than it does about just the elimination diet. Because elimination's easy. Oh, I just cut it off. Oh, I'm not going to call that person anymore. He's bad for my life. Oh, I'm not going to call that friend anymore. Or I'm not going to eat that food anymore. Like cutting things off in your life, trimming the fat, as it were, is the easiest thing you can do. Incorporation is the difficulty. Right. Because you have to get to know things, the foods, the people, the things that are good for your life. It takes more time out of your day to be mindful in that approach and understand what you're giving to your life. And it's hard for people, right? It takes more time, more work. You got to be less fearful of what you might find. You got to really dig in and see what's going on and be inclusionary. It's not about elimination.
And you mentioned that as well, Brendan, about including. So if you want to get on a plant-based diet, you talk about adding in things before you take them off. Just go a little bit deeper on that then.
Yeah, I think psychologically too, it's nice to not say to yourself, when people are transitioning, if they've eaten a standard American diet for 30, 40 years, it can be a shock when they start taking things away. So just think of adding new things. So I would often say, have a smoothie in the morning, just load it up with a lot of greens and some plant-based protein and, get the nutrition in. And then what people often find is when they eat more nutrition, so vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants that are in plants, they stop being hungry, because the hunger signal is, of course, this very primitive signal that we get that tells us we need nutrition, we need fuel. So it triggers us to go out and eat. So the trouble today, of course, a lot of people are overfed yet undernourished. So a lot of food out there has very little nutrition, whereas back in the day, food and nutrition were the same thing. Now you could eat white bread all day long, and physically your stomach will be full, but your brain is sending a signal to say you're not full because you don't have the nutrition you need. So no nutrition in that. So when you start getting the nutrition you need with smoothies, things like that, just more plants, you just won't be hungry later, and you just actually won't want to eat. Like my thing too that I try to help people with eating more plant-based is you shouldn't have to have too much willpower, to be honest. Like willpower is finite. You want to use it on things that you have to use it on, where you need willpower. Changing what you eat shouldn't be that way. So, like I say, adding these things just makes it so that your palate will change as well. You start to really appreciate the subtlety of different flavors that someone on a standard American diet wouldn't. Everything's so over-flavored. And then you just don't want that anymore. You notice the different flavors of different types of lettuce. Some are more citrusy, some are more salty. Even potatoes. Like, someone eats a standard American diet, to go and have just a baked potato would be flavorless. Yet, when your taste buds have been recalibrated, there's all types of flavors in it, depending on the soil it was grown in, where it was grown, you know, all these types of things. So just become more sensitive and more aware of that. And then you never feel like you're missing out. You eat what you want to eat, and it just happens to be really healthy, good food. And that takes time, but then it's permanent. You know, it's not just a short-term thing. Like, that's who you are now. You eat well because you want to. And if you tried eating something that wasn't good, it would taste horrible. And you're like, oh, I can't even eat that anymore. So,
by the way,
and that's a great place to be.
I'll add to what you're saying here, because I know how you live your life. I know you really well now. It's like, Brendan's not the type of guy that looks to food for fulfillment in the ways that other people do. And I don't either. This is why we connected pretty quickly. I used to always laugh, like my wife would say, oh, you're such a, like, you eat like a rabbit. You're like a survivalist. You know, you just eat nuts and berries and seeds and you're eating all this stuff. Like, none of that excites me. Don't you ever want to just eat meat? Don't you ever just want to eat this or eat that? Or, like, you know, it's that foodie mentality. And for me, it's easy because I'm a bevy. I'm not a foodie. You know, I get excited about what I'm drinking. That's where I get my excitement, genuinely. I just find that fermented beverages are really exciting. All the different esters and phenolic compounds that you smell and taste and experience they're so heavily nuanced, more so than any food I've ever eaten before, because they've been fermented, right? So they're so complex and so amazing and so, like, fun to sit with and share with friends and enjoy. I get so much out of that I could hardly care about getting that from my food personally. That's my own view.
Yeah, like the different acids you were talking about before, and just the way, like, there's just so much complexity to it. I've learned so much about beverages from Mark, and it's just really fascinating. Just like things like, you know, wine. I watched that documentary about wine, and I thought it was really fascinating. I know nothing about wine, but of course these flavors in there of ingredients that of course are not in there, like grass, you know, and oak.
Cat pee.
Cat pee, you know, it's not in the wine, but right? Why does it taste that way? And you know, it's similar to fermented juice and cider as well, is that, you know, you get all these like really interesting flavors, but not by putting things in there, just by the way they react with one another and the way they interact. And you can probably explain it better, but
well, you were saying that cheap wines are sort of, they're not allowed to put what's in them, and it's like powders going into some of these cheaper wines as opposed to real grapes.
It's funny. I used to say to people, you don't know what's in your wine. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you've never seen nutrition facts or ingredients on the label of any wine you've ever consumed in your entire life, and I can say that with certainty. They're like, well, I think you're actually kind of right, but you know, it's grapes. Like, why would I care about what's in my wine? It's just grapes. I'm like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, well, I do know. I'm like, well, how do you know? I'm like, well, I don't know. I guess maybe I don't, or I just do. But they don't know. They just don't. There's an assumption that's made that the government's going to just protect me. And these bodies or organizations that are out there that are guiding my path toward food and beverage, they're just going to guide me in the right direction and make sure that I'm consuming things that are good for me. Well, okay, those are probably the same types of people, though, that controlled the system of, like, prescribed drugs. And that didn't end up so well for America as a country, right? So this is probably the same type of thing, because last time I checked, and I'm in the game, alcohol is a drug. Caffeine is a drug, right? And drug as a definition is a pretty broad term too, but point being, these are things that can be isolated and have a high functioning sort of impact on your body, right? So if you're injecting ethanol and taking your alcohol that way, you can get drunk pretty damn quick. And you'll have a raging hangover. And that's basically what you're drinking when you drink a lot of these crappier, sort of lower priced beverages that you're finding on the shelf. Malt liquor, hard seltzer half the time. I mean, these things are made overnight. So the net impact on your body is pretty negative, right? But people see it from whatever the packaging is or the marketing pitch that they're hearing on the advertisement, right? Oh, it's better for me. Oh, it's healthier for me. Is it? Oh yeah, because that guy said so. Well, who's that guy? I don't know, some voice I heard on the commercial. That's how you live your life? You take that guy's voice as truth, right? That God voice that comes down out of the TV or on your phone? Like, look at what it actually is. Understand what's in it. Like something like this, it's apples. It's one ingredient. And it says that. The ingredients are there. The nutrition facts are there. It's on the package. That would be illegal if I put it on there and it wasn't truthful.
Well, I thought that was really interesting too. I didn't know this, but you told me that it's illegal. Like, not just, like, it's actually illegal to list nutrition facts for wine.
Right, so 7% alcohol or above is regarded as true wine. That's what a wine drinker would care about, anything above 7%, so that's where the money's at. So where the money is at is where the organizing bodies that govern this are going to care about, is where the money is, right? So the lobby and the government that are controlling this business are saying anything above 7%, No nutrition facts, no ingredients, completely illegal. And whether they say it's illegal or call it out that way is debatable. But the point is I've never seen that on any label. And the last time I checked, because I'm in the business, if you submit something that shows nutrition facts or shows the ingredients, they'll disallow it. They won't approve it. It's called a Certificate of Label Approval, a COLA. And that COLA is really the antithesis to a transparent process that would allow you to know what you're putting in your body when you're consuming alcohol. And the last time I checked, because I was in the fitness business and because I'm just a human being that's 40 years old and I know what other people are like in life, a high percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, but a high percentage of people in my life around my age that work out in the gyms every day drink alcohol. A high percentage. And none of them know what they're putting in their body if they're drinking wine. If they're drinking beer, they could know, but then it's sort of a choice thing. Some breweries put it on there, some don't, fine. And with hard seltzer, they might know, they might not.
But so what you're saying is anything above 7% alcohol in America,
if it's wine,
they're not, you won't see it because somebody's
not because they don't care to, not because they're not interested, not because it was just a choice they made. It's illegal for them to put it on the label. It won't be allowed to be on the shelf that way.
Right. And what you're saying is because of that, if you get a wine that's sort of $15 or something, the chances of that being grapes in there as opposed to
not very high. If you're spending less than $25 a bottle on a bottle of wine, the chances are great that you're not consuming grapes as a wine, right? Wow. The grapier wine would be the higher priced wine, $25 and north of there, because it just costs that much to put 100% grapes in a bottle, or rather in a barrel for a year, and then in a bottle. The packaging alone would cost you close to what it would cost you just to buy the $2 chuck you find at a grocery store for $6.99, $4.99, $2.99, whatever it is. That's just the packaging alone that if I had to run it through distribution, pay for the labels, the bottles, the caps, the cork, whatever, and then run it through two different layers of distribution, that being the wholesaler and the retailer, by the time it gets in your shopping bag and you take it home, it's $2.99 just on the packaging. That's an empty bottle you just took home, right? So at that price, it can't be wine. It just isn't, period. It's not. So stop telling yourself that it is and stop buying it, right? Stop consuming alcohol just for the alcohol. Otherwise, just buy a vial of alcohol and shoot it into your body. That's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so interesting. Like I say, this is a new world to me. I've learned so much. But I think the really important thing is not just not doing bad, but actually doing good, like this, like pulp culture, the new one with all these ingredients, again, just all fermented. And this one with reishi and lavender, there's a function, there's a purpose for those. Like you actually get something from it. This is a relax one, so this is just kind of chill and relax. And
the other thing too is, so if you look at the green can, it's called Think. And that has ginseng, it's got matcha, it's got lion's mane. These are very uplifting, very positive experiences you get from these functional ingredients, right? But when you now have alcohol interacting with all of that, what alcohol does is it basically removes inhibitions. It opens your mind up. That's the great thing about alcohol, in a social setting at least, is it opens you up, chills you out. You're just more aware and more kind of like open to anything that's happening for a temporary period of time before that really crappy alcohol you're drinking messes you up and sends you home crying and hungover, right? But if you drink the good stuff, you get the matcha, you get the ginseng, you get the lion's mane mushrooms, and it's coming into your system in a way that's uninhibited. Less doors closed to it. It's just rushing right in there. It almost feels euphoric.
So you're saying, we were talking before the interview, but you were saying there's kind of good alcohol and bad alcohol in terms of how it gets absorbed.
Well, there's only one alcohol.
Okay.
Right? And the way that we consume it as people, the human consumption of alcohol is ethanol, right? No different than you're throwing into your car at the gas pump. It's ethanol. Right? You can make it from corn and just make it as malt liquor and throw it into a hard seltzer. Or you can have it as a natural wine that's made properly somewhere in France, and it's a beautiful wine. It's 100% grapes, and it was barrel aged for a year with no crap put in it and nothing done to it when it was done. You just drank the full bottle of it and you're good. And that's great. But we don't see a lot of that. Most of the stuff that we have access to goes through a distribution channel with layers of distribution built in, with layers of margin built in. So the cheapest they can get it as possible is the best way to do it. And that's not really conducive to a system that gives the consumer the healthiest product they can get, right? Alcohol is a pretty messed up system. It just is. So thank God for home brewing. People can make their own stuff at home. But how many of us do it? Not that many. But craft beer was boosted over in the recent last 10 years or so by home brewers. There's clubs all over the US of guys making their own beer. And I say guys because it was typically guys, right? Now there's high alcohol kombucha, and a lot of people making kombucha at home. You can buy a DIY kombucha kit. I saw it on Shark Tank, so I know it must exist, right? But people can make kombucha at home now, and they can get the benefits of kombucha at home because they made it that way, and that's great, right? This is no different, though, than somebody just buying juice from that apple orchard that I was going to as a kid in Ontario and getting fresh cider, as they called it, taking it home and leaving it in my fridge for 4 months and forgetting about it and never actually drinking it, and then pulling it out and realizing it's now fermented, and instead of dumping it down the drain, now as a 40-year-old, I'm drinking it, and it's making me feel great. But Mother Nature made it. I didn't make anything. So if Mother Nature, people would say by accident, it wasn't by accident. We've been engineered to be this way, the way that we are. This was engineered through nature to be the way that it is. It's an organism, it's living, it's raw, it's full of probiotics, it's zero sugar, it's so much goodness in that can, but it happens to have ethanol, happens to contain alcohol. But it isn't just an alcoholic beverage. It's a beverage first, but happens to be alcoholic. Alcohol is the secondary topic here. The beverage component of this is first, is primary. It's functional, it's healthy, it's good for your body, and it's in beverage form. But it also contains alcohol. And by the way, every single kombucha on this planet that's ever made traditionally the right way, the natural way, contains alcohol. Every single one of them. And if it says no % of alcohol, they're lying. It doesn't exist. Every time you ferment sugar, it creates alcohol. Period, bar none. Full stop. So if you don't understand the science of fermentation, learn about it, figure it out, and then come back and try again. Right? Because that's where people miss the mark, is they don't know what fermentation is. They've heard of the term, they think they know what it is, but they don't really know. I even hear people say, oh, I'm drinking this hard seltzer now. It's really good. It's fermented. I'm like, oh, is it? Yeah, great. Because every single fermented beverage on the planet has alcohol, and every single way that you get alcohol is through a fermented beverage. You can't actually have alcohol unless it's fermented. So to say that something is it's fermented, that means it's healthier. Well, it could still be a crappy beverage of some kind, like a malt liquor, like Old English, like you see in the gangster flicks back in the 1990s, like gangster hip hop flicks. They're brown bagging all those big bottles of beer, right? It's just malt liquor. Mickey's, Old English, whatever, Schlitz, Schmaltz. These are not health beverages. And that's the same thing that these new companies with hard seltzers are putting their label on and saying, oh, this is better for you. It's the same thing, but it's clear, it's been filtered,
So what would be the reason to not remove the sort of alcoholic effects then in terms of what you're doing? It sounds like there's a lot of health things, but I guess you could get that without having the alcoholic element in it. What's your philosophy? Oh, you couldn't?
Could not.
Okay, all right.
So you have an apple, you have apple juice, you have cider, and you have cider vinegar. There are 4 ways that you can consume an apple, and all 4 of them exist in nature, naturally. And we happen to be number 3 on the scale of 4.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and like I was saying too, I hadn't drank in so many years, and it just opened up a whole new world in terms of, and like I say, the first time it was like a nootropic. It was this ability to focus, ability to feel creative, and just get a lot done. That's what got me into it.
Just a better buzz, man.
Right.
Yeah, and then feeling great and going to the gym an hour later. Like no dehydration, like great intestinal flora, can digest really well. I have one of these with dinner every night, just really helps digestion. And then feeling great, like I say, not even just the next day, but like literally an hour later. I live in Venice, I'm close to Gold's there, and I'll just walk over and do a late night workout and feel amazing.
So it's almost like how people would probably have a coffee to have a bit of a change of state and a pick me up. This is kind of more like that. You've got some alcohol for that slight state or mind change, and then you've got the healthy benefit. Is that kind of how your reason for creating this then, would you say?
Well, and partly muscle too. There's that like relaxation, and when there's relaxation, there's efficiency gain too. If you don't have to work as hard, you don't have to spend as much energy to move a muscle. That's the benefit. And I found that through inflammation reduction by eating more greens and chlorophyll-rich foods back when I was training full time. And now I find that like a full spectrum alcohol like this can help with that as well.
What's full? What do you mean by full
So
spectrum?
this is
So
actually something.
Full
that-
spectrum, pretty simply said, is just that this is an alcoholic beverage that it contains the full spectrum of what Mother Nature intended. Okay, so Mother Nature fermented this. We didn't boil it, we didn't heat it up, we didn't add chemicals, we didn't create a process to make this product. This is literally cold pressed juice left to ferment by its own devices through nature for 3 months and ends up being what it is today. So it contains the full spectrum of what Mother Nature intended that it should be in that beverage, right? We didn't take anything out, we didn't filter it, we didn't kill anything off. It was just the cold pressed juice that came in, and that's what left, right? So it contains that full spectrum, and you get this entourage effect, which you might have heard in the cannabis world is, you get this entourage effect of the many different components of that fermented product working together, not just ethanol. So alcohol can be in that entourage of ingredients or byproducts, but the polyphenolic compounds and the esters and all the different components, molecularly speaking, that exist in that fermented beverage are what makes you feel so good right now and later and long term, right? This is truly a health tonic. It is a health beverage. So it compounds over time and it makes you feel better even immediately, right? So as you drink it today and you have 3, 4, 5 of them, it's a great buzz. It just feels fantastic. It's not like other buzzes. This is more like the mushrooms of the alcohol world. You do feel a little smarter. You do feel a little bit more fun. You definitely feel lighter, right?
So would you take it before you, like as a sort of workout drink then?
For sure.
Really?
Yeah, on the regular. I have 3 of these before I work out when I work out. For sure, because I drink one at 9 a.m., one at noon, one at 3 p.m. And then I'm in the gym by 3:30, 4 o'clock. I finish my day and I go home.
And what about, like, I guess there's a certain, like, I guess you can't, can you drive on, what's the
But
alcohol
again,
content on
so
that?
for the average person, and I'll speak just for men because I am one, a guy my size, I can have 1 of these per hour and be totally fine to drive, right? So if I have 3 of them over the course of 9 hours or 8 hours, great. Yeah, of course I can drive, no problem.
Right. Are there any negative sort of, that you, I guess, you're obviously promoting this, but trying to be very sort of sitting on the fence with this. Is there any sort of downside? Do you dehydrate? Is there anything that you've got to be careful of?
Zero downside when consumed the way that it was intended.
Okay, and
So
what
when
would that be?
So in a way that's moderate and mindful.
Okay.
If you're over consuming anything in life, you're going to hurt or not feel great, period. But especially more so with alcohol, because we actually already have it in our mind that if we over consume alcohol, I'm going to be hungover. I'm not going to feel good. So there's a bit of that placebo effect too. You're making yourself not feel good. Kind of like when you go to the gym and you're like, I'm just gonna train for an hour and do whatever and I'll feel great. And you probably will feel great because you feel like you've done something, right? It could be the worst workout you ever did. You could have showed up 50% of the way and not done, close to anywhere near your capacity. You could have had a pretty light workout, but you feel great because you went to the gym, because you got there. Like in yoga, they always say just turn to your mat or show up on your mat. Just get to your mat, right? Make sure you get to class. Right? And even if it's a bad class, you don't perform that day, at least you got there and you feel better as a result, right? This is kind of the same effect where it's like, if I crack a can of this, as soon as I hear the lid crack, I'm already less stressed. For real. I have 1 sip, I'm like, okay, all right, cool, right? And it's just a way to start my day. This is 9 a.m., by the way. I'm doing my emails and getting my day worked out. I got things going on and I'm hustling right from the second that I crack that can, right? But then by noon, I have another one. And by 3 p.m., I have another one. But it's not for any sort of intention as far as getting drunk or having alcohol in my system. This is just a beverage that I consume because it makes me feel great. I feel nourished, I feel happy, I feel less stressed. So why not consume it, right? If we can give to our bodies something that eliminates stress, that's healthy, right? There are many ways to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of
I know
people
you talk about how that stress in weight gain, if you've got a stress system.
Right. Stress is really the biggest killer in our society. It's really the greatest thing that is holding us back. It's the biggest barrier to our happiness is stress, number 1. So if in fact this was one of the greater stress killers, then why not consume it?
Well, and that's true too. Like stress, as I learned when I was researching this, when I found out my cortisol levels were high, which is what happens when stress gets greater, cortisol goes up, which is destructive hormone that eats away at muscle. You build body fat, you don't sleep well, you crave stimulants, caffeine and sugar. But if you perceive something as stressful, then it is. Like, it doesn't actually have to be real, which I thought was very interesting, because if you worry about things, like and I talk about this in my book, like there are, I call uncomplimentary stressors that you just, you worry about, but are out of your control, like what the weather is going to be like, you know, or things you can't control and you worry about is manifested as a real physical stress, and it has all the same effects as any real stress. So it's a lot of it's mindset. A lot of it is knowing what you can change and working toward changing it, but then things that you can't, don't worry about it because it's doing you no good at all. And I think this helps you get in that mind frame as well, where it's a very real view of life, where you just, like what you can't, you know, have an effect on, you let it go. What you can, you work on. And you get up every day and you work on that. And then I think that control too just feels really good because you've broke it down. We all have what I call a stress threshold, which is a certain level of stress that we can handle until cortisol goes too high and then causes all those bad things I talked about. Now, if you can back off on the psychological stress and just, you know, not worrying about things you don't have control over, you can actually up your I call it productive stress, which training, for example, like you get a return when you break down body tissue by training. Sure, it's physically stressful, but the return is greater fitness. Like you've got a gain. Whereas worrying about things you have no control over, there's no gain. It's all loss. So if we can lower uncomplimentary stress, and then we can work more, we can work harder, we can train more, we can train harder. We get the results of harder work, which is more success usually, and more training, which is greater fitness. Yet our stress threshold has not spilled over because we've lowered our overall stress from a different point, which is, you know, for very many people, just psychological. They just worry about things. And I find this too, you know, this can be very helpful with that. And again, you know, I hadn't thought about that initially when I was writing the book, you know, because I hadn't drank it so long, as I mentioned, but this totally plays into that too, is that you can just completely take control of that.
Well, we talked off camera as well about northern Spain, and this being an inspiration. That culture there of drinking natural cider, or sidra natural as they call it, is something that is part of everybody's life in northern Spain, and specifically Asturias, which is an autonomous region in northern Spain, and in Basque country as well, which is more famous for its Michelin-starred restaurants and tourism and whatnot. But in Asturias, they make something called sidra, which is 100% apples. It's fermented wild, spontaneously, like we do here, and it tastes sour. And it's probiotic, and it's zero sugar, and it's about 6% alcohol, and they drink it all day long during the day, every single day. And if anyone accused them of not being productive, well, they'd be either uninformed or completely wrong, because they're a very happy society. They're very connected on a family level. You know, there's a lot of very young kids with very old people around them all day long. Anywhere you go there, it's a very connected society. They're so happy, and they're healthy. They don't have the same issues that we have here in America of, you know, obesity and cancer and all these other things that are going on. They have so much less stress in their life that they're healthier as a result. And what are they doing the entire way through each day? Well, they're chatting and listening to music and dancing and hanging out, but the whole time doing this and this. They're drinking and eating and drinking and eating. And these are signals to the brain that, hey, gift, reward, oh, this is nice, thank you. Like you're constantly giving to your body, so your body's happy, right? And they don't have to worry about what they're putting in their body because it was made right there, and there was care put into it, and it's the raw ingredients that are coming from their orchards, their fields. It's all the stuff that's right there for them within their community.
I suppose there's a difference also between having like one and that's it, then kind of, you know, finishing work and then just kind of drinking for 3 or 4 hours non-stop on an empty stomach.
Well, this is the thing. So they start siesta at 11 a.m. every single day. And they go at 11 a.m. and they consume a product just like this for hours, till 3 p.m., if not later. And they do that every single day. They're never drunk. They're never hungover. They're never out fighting in the streets. You know, like they're consuming an alcoholic beverage, surely, as we observe it, but they're not actually doing that knowingly. They don't think they're just consuming alcohol. They're just sitting down drinking sidra. That's just what you do. They're not thinking actively in their mind about the consumption of alcohol. They're not thinking, hey, bring on the buzz. Hey, get me drunk. Hey, let's go out and have a scrap in the street. Hey, like, let's do something bad for ourselves right now. That's not what their thinking is. Their thinking is, let's give to ourselves. Let's give a good time. Let's give a smile. Let's be healthier and less stressed, right? They view this as not even as a treat. It's actually something that's necessity. It's part of their day. It's a way of showing the body goodness through God's creations. It's like, this is an apple that came off a tree that got pressed into juice, and then we left for Mother Nature to do her thing with, and now we drink it. And it makes our gut feel good, because 70% of our overall immunity and health in our body is rooted in our gut health, right? Our gut is so important to our overall well-being, and we need to give it living good things, probiotics, put that in the gut so that it gives you a healthy army to defend your system every day. And that's what this Sidra does for them in northern Spain. So when I found that, I was inspired. I actually found it online first. I came from the fitness world for almost a decade and moved to California to chase down a girl that I fell in love with and got married, and now all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I'm an immigrant. And where am I going to start now? What's my new story? Well, I'm going to completely reinvent myself and choose a new category, but I'm going to merge together my past experience, which was beverage and fitness. So I wanted to make the healthiest beverage I could make, but it happened to be an alcoholic beverage. So I wanted to look around the world to find the world's healthiest alcoholic beverage as it already existed. I don't want to rewrite the script or tell a new story. I wanted to find one that already existed that was so deeply entrenched in a culture that story needed to be told somewhere else. So I went to northern Spain, I found it online, went there, brought my father with me. We toured around to different cider companies there and met up with the makers, and every time I would ask them, how do you make your cider? And they're like, you don't make the cider. We don't make the cider. Mother Nature makes the cider. We just watch. We're just custodians. They basically fill up their tanks, let it sit for 3 months, and then put it in a bottle. That's it. That's literally it. I thought, this is the simplest way to make an alcoholic beverage on the planet, period, bar none. It just, full stop. I don't understand how no one knows this. So I thought, I got to make this a more Californiaized kind of concept, right? The Californification of northern Spanish cider was to put it in a can and carbonate it. But that's it. And we play with different ingredients that they would never play with. They only use apples. For me, I'm not so biased. If I look at a fruit or an herb or something I want to work with, then we put it in, just like in the cold pressed juice world. The greatest thing that ever happened to America from a food sense, in my view, is that when we started to understand that it wasn't just about the concentrated apple juice, orange juice, and all the stuff I was raised on as a kid, cranberry juice, all the stuff you get off the gun at every restaurant you go to, right? It's all just in a concentrated form and a syrup in a bag in the back, and it's off the gun now at the restaurant. I always thought that was so disgusting. I always loved juice though, but I wanted real juice. And when I first got apple juice from a farm, because I'm in Ontario where I grew up, there's apples everywhere, orchards everywhere. There was nothing that could compare to fresh pressed apple juice. It's like, wow, it's murky and muddy looking and brown, but it tastes incredibly good. It's just so good. How can I not get this everywhere? Well, because it has to be consumed fresh, because otherwise it'll ferment.
And is this sort of got a lifespan on it?
Years, just like wine.
Okay.
Gets better over time.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you see, like you guys are leading this, what you call better for you? Is that a category? Sort of?
Yeah. So better for you in the alcohol segment is the new sub-segment that's emerging quickly. In the last year or two, it really started with the trend toward lower sugar options. Then it was about a little bit of what's in it and what's good in it. So hard kombucha or higher alcohol kombucha came along. Kombucha was already understood in the marketplace as something that was probiotic and good for your body. So these higher alcohol versions became a quickly understood product because people are already consuming non-alcoholic kombucha or low alcohol kombucha. So that came quickly. Now you have people that are specifically looking for functional benefit even in their alcoholic beverage. Because also, last time I checked, when you're consuming alcohol socially, it's done over hours. It's not done over minutes. So for a fitness guy like me, I did think about that a lot when I was younger. I'm going to be out tonight from at least probably 8 o'clock as the pre-drink at my buddy's place. And we're out by 10:30 because we want to make sure we beat the line or get into the place we're going to. And we're there till 4 a.m. And by the time you get home at 4:30, 5 o'clock, full of the street meat, the hot dogs and whatever else you're putting in your belly, you feel rough. You didn't eat the whole time. There's a good 7, 8 hours there at least that you're not eating. You're forgetting to drink water. There's nothing good going into your body. If you didn't drink alcohol at all, and I said, hey, Matthew, meet me at 8 o'clock tonight, and we're going to not eat anything until 5 a.m. and stay up the whole time, and then go to bed. And then I'm going to call you at 10 a.m. and see how you feel. Right? Yeah. But I'm going to call you at 10 a.m. tomorrow and see how you feel. And actually, when I call you at 10 a.m., I'm going to tell you, hey, you're an hour late for work. And now you're rolling out of bed feeling like a complete idiot because you're late for work, you feel like crap. And what'd you do the night before? Oh, I had the best time ever. Yeah, until I said that thing I shouldn't have said, or I got in that fight, or did whatever I shouldn't have done. right? If I was just more mindful in my consumption of this beverage and chose a different way to do it, it could have been a great experience, a lot of fun, and no other story to tell. The story ended when it should have. The next day I got back on the horse and felt great all day. You know, this whole hair of the dog concept is complete BS to me. You don't need any hair of the dog if you didn't mess up what you did before. Just do it right the whole way through and you never have to fix it. You know, you don't fix what's not broken, right?
Right.
And if you just do it the right way like this, you're good. You just feel great.
So if people are interested in kind of like it sounds, I'm converted. I'm gonna have one of these for breakfast, I think, by the sound of things.
Perfect.
But if people are interested in finding out more, or do you have distribution in other areas? Because I understand there's some laws around that at the moment.
Yeah, we're
still.
across California at retail, 1,000 different accounts across the state, Whole Foods, Bevmo, the big chain retailers like that, lots of independents. We love our independent stores, bars and restaurants as well. In New York, we launched in January of 2020, and then also in Arizona, we're currently there. So we're expanding beyond the state of California, but direct to consumer, you can buy online in 38 states across the US. So pretty easy to get access to the product.
What about internationally? Are you plans to take it overseas?
Not immediate plans, but we are in Canada because I'm from there, and this is a way to kind of give back to specifically to my dad. I always thought it'd be so cool if like my dad could invite his buddies and go down to a bar somewhere and find my stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and then to my buddies that I hang out with in my 20s and 30s, my good buddies that I used to go drinking with, if they could go to a bar and drink my stuff, that would kind of replace myself in some senses because I'm here now and I've left to go marry a girl and be down in the US, and I feel great when they send me a text of an image of them drinking my stuff at a bar in Toronto. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So even if we don't make money on it or it's not a big market for us, so be it. It's just more of a personal play there. But beyond the US and Canada, we've had lots of interest in the UK, France, you know, Asian markets as well. They're really into this stuff. Obviously in the Pacific Rim region of the world, they're really into fermented foods. So they understand things like this. And we've had interest from Taiwan, from Singapore, from China as well, Hong Kong specifically, an importer there. But we've had to say no to everybody because we keep selling out of everything we're making just here in California.
Right.
So now we've expanded, we've ramped up production, we've got a lot more capacity now than we've ever had. So this is what's bringing on the launch to New York. It's allowing us to do a lot more in California with a new distributor here as well, going much bigger here in Southern California. So we've got some plans to really expand, but still looking at what's right in front of us before we go too far in the future.
Yeah, okay. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place to go? I know you've got a book, Brendan. How can people find out more about you and your different businesses that you're involved in?
I mean, Instagram's always pretty good,
Yeah,
right?
Instagram's good. We have 101 Cider on Instagram, the new site.
Yeah, new websites are coming up actually this month, so by the time this airs, I think it'll probably be live by then. But yeah, 101cider.com, pulpculture.la is the website for Pulp Culture. So again, Pulp Culture is the hard pressed juice, but in the can, it's very similar to 101 Cider House as a sour cider. Very similar products, but two different distinct audiences. One very functional in its benefit, one very healthy and clean in its benefit. But you can find them both through the websites or on Instagram.
Okay, cool. And just your books as well. Just tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago I wrote these, but yeah, my first one, Thrive, which is basically my nutritional philosophy. There's also 100 recipes in there. Then I did a fitness one, so workout program, and then a little more specific, obviously, to fitness and exercise and how food can fuel and help repair from that. Then I did another one that is called Whole Foods to Thrive. It's basically, it's 200 recipes, but also the first third of the book is about environmental issues around food production. And then the most recent one is, it's a cookbook, so 200 recipes and pictures, so lots of pictures, which the other ones don't have. Really good food photography, but yeah, that's kind of the lineup.
Yeah. So final question then is I guess it's to both of you in relation to this project. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you and others have believed is impossible and gone on to make it possible. What would you say in your recent business venture is an example of escaping your own personal limits?
Want to go first?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I go back to the Vega days, you know, back then we, there's no demand for something that pea protein, rice protein, hemp protein, soy and whey were kind of the protein bases. So trying to help people understand the value and the benefit of eating something or drinking something that they didn't know about and there was no demand for. And I think being open to that too, you know, there's a lot of great quotes from folks in the past, like Henry Ford, for example. I remember him reading one of his quotes, and it was, you know, if I listened to my customers, I would have built a faster horse, right? Because back then they just wanted to get places faster. They couldn't even conceive a car was a thing, right? So I think, I think just dreaming up ideas and making them happen. And, you know, one of the things too we struggle with, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but now with Vega being, you know, part of a bigger company, you know, they're so into focus groups. Like, let's just ask consumers what they want. But, you know, and there's that Steve Jobs quote, it's like, it's not the consumer's job to know what he wants, which I totally believe. It's like no one said, hey, I wish I could have, you know, a sugar-free, totally natural, you know, alcoholic beverage that was made from one ingredient. Because they didn't know that was possible, right? Like, they couldn't even dream that up.
No.
So I think that's up to us as entrepreneurs and folks who are really interested in this type of thing, come up with elegant solutions to problems. And, you know, like, you know, there's these hangover capsules and pills and all these things on the market. It's like, well, why don't you just, you know, drink something that you don't need that for? Like, just like I said before, the elegance of the solution I really like, and simplicity. And so I think just keeping that mindset, you know, just keep thinking about new ways of doing things, and don't ask too many questions, to be honest. Like, a lot of people, they don't have a lot of imagination, I found. Like, of course some do, but there's some, you know, it's just status quo. They're just not interested in seeing what's possible, and they just not asking why enough. You know, like with Mark, I mean, we always ask, well, why not? Why can't we do this? Why can't we try this? Let's try that. And, you know, just this constant learning and experimenting that I think is really interesting. And that's where you're going to, you know, if, like that saying too, you know, if you want something you've never had, you got to do something you've never done. You know, it's just sort of that people get into this rut and just can't break free sometimes. So I think just really just opening it up too.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Mark?
I think goes back to what I said earlier, like escaping your limits is done always the best and fastest by way of just choosing discomfort. Because your limit is your comfort, right? Like, whatever you're comfortable with, wherever that stops is your limit. So just choose discomfort, then you're beyond your limit. But specifically as it relates to what we do here in our business and making a product like this is something that's heavily regulated because it is alcohol and it's a drug, right? But beyond that, forget the government, forget the regulatory side of this. The barrier that truly exists is the cultural barrier, the social barrier that surrounds the taboo of alcohol or any drug, right? So we talked earlier about you being, you know, from the UK and you're in Europe. That's very different than growing up in America, where in Europe, you know, little kids consume alcohol and anyone can drink during the day and it's no big deal. But you also don't see the drunkenness and inebriation and all the really poor behavior.
In Southern Europe, probably Northern Europe, maybe a little bit different.
Maybe, but you know, but again, like my family is Scottish background. So, you know, when I went to Scotland for the first time with my dad, I was so blown away that here we were in a distillery and he's telling me to take a shot of whiskey. And I remember losing my breath for minutes. Like, oh my God, why would anyone ever want to drink this? Yet I'm surrounded by old men who have drank so much of it that their noses are huge and bright red now. They've done it all their life. It's like they can't stop getting enough of this stuff, right? They love whiskey. They love scotch, right? So, you know, I understood though at 9 a.m. you could be in a bar drinking. In fact, the bars are usually shut by 5, 6 o'clock. You know, so people are in there all day in the pub in Scotland drinking all day. And it was a way to pass the time and just enjoy life. And whatever way you need to pass your time or enjoy your life, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I know that other cultures in this world exist where they drink through the day. And that's what makes them happy. I wanted to find something that would allow me to do that here in America, where we could change the understanding of alcohol by doing it in a healthier way, but also consuming it at a healthier time of day. So I literally built a day bar, a day club for people to come in now and consume this during the day like I do, and take meetings, you know, and be here and be productive. Use it as a co-working space. Get your laptop out, you know, be productive and have a drink. It's not about being drunk. It's about the drink, right? So being drunk, there's not really any place for it, period. That just, all that you mean when you say you're drunk is you've overconsumed. There is no such thing as drunkenness or even the word drunk beyond a conversation about overconsumption. It just doesn't exist. So I just don't believe in the word. I don't even believe in the word drunk or drunkenness, because that just means it's something that I just wouldn't participate in, right? Being mindful in your approach and doing anything the right way is the most important thing, even with fitness. You're not gonna go to the gym for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. You'd be busted. Your body's completely broken. And then you get none of that positive reward from all the repair that happens after and all the benefit that you were looking for, right? So just be more mindful in your consumption of it, and that actually allows you to go beyond what your perceived limit is. Because when your limit is based on what little that you know, it's not really a limit. It's just you don't know enough.
Yeah.
So get to know more, be more mindful, and then discover what your limit is. Because there are true limits in life, period. Whether they be financial, whether they be chronological. I mean, there are definitely limitations in life, and we have to find ways to work within them and in a way escape them and work around them. But you can't ever really truly go beyond your true limit, because your limit is your limit. But it's about understanding what leads up to that limit, because a lot of people think they hit their limit way before they actually did, right? So that discomfort is what the symbol is of going beyond your perceived limit. As soon as you find discomfort, you haven't hit your limit. You just haven't trained yourself to go beyond your perceived limit, right? So welcome discomfort, get to know it, identify with it in a way that's positive, right? And just be more mindful.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, it's been a great education for me. I didn't realize that this was actually good for me now. So I'm converted. So
and we
thanks
appreciate you coming down, man.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
and
thanks.
best of luck, and look forward to seeing these at a gym near you.
Yeah, well,
in the near
hopefully
future.
one day we can have coolers of this stuff at the gym all across America. I mean, from a regulatory perspective, that's not allowed right now, but in a perfect world, that would happen.
Yeah, fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
very much.
Matthew,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Great
Thanks
to
a lot.
meet you.
Cheers.